This is No Hate Radio.
I'm no stranger to the rain. Oh, no. I'm no stranger to the rain.
This is No Hate Radio. And today's podcast is being recorded on November 14th, 2024. About a week after the election, the general election of 2024. And there is this particular session, I think, is going to have a slightly different tack than our normal theme of why and what are we going to do about it. This one is going to be a theme of, okay, here's the facts. What now? I do want to say that those who are listening to these podcasts as they are released, thank you very much for giving us an opportunity to express some ideas. And as I always say, please call us on our phone line, which is 442-4-NO-HATE, and leave a suggestion or volunteer to appear and discuss a subject that you think might be meritorious for us on No Hate Radio. Also, I encourage everybody to go to the website, nohateradio.com, and review any of the previously recorded sessions or episodes that we have. And they're all available to you through the website, and give you an idea of some of the things that we try to express or talk about and use the platform of No Hate Radio to get out to people. We broadcast here from the physical facility of Allendale United Methodist Church in St. Petersburg, Florida. And we try to provide both a general perspective and sometimes a Florida-based or local-based perspective on the things that we talk about. Our theme song, as you may have heard a little part of as we opened up our session today, is called No Stranger to the Rain. And I think right now there are a lot of people feeling a little downpour of rain. Some are certainly celebrating. Some are certainly feeling very good about what happened in the elections of 2024. And one can go through and try to calculate, as political pundits will do. I spent my whole undergraduate career studying what we then call governments, now called political science, where we would talk about what happened in this county or that county, what issue did or did not resonate with voters, what thing drove voters in a particular direction, why were things done. We can go into that, but there are many news sources and editorial or other locations where a person can go study the particulars of the election. I would say that it should be this, for No Hate Radio purposes. Here today, what we're going to talk about in the category of okay, we know what we know. The former President Donald Trump and incoming president clearly won the election using every measure that you can use to calculate it. Turnout was historically high, I think only exceeded in 2008 by the Barack Obama presidential race, but in any case, historically high. The election was conducted honestly and accurately and fairly. In fact, election officials spent millions and millions of dollars at the behest of the MAGA movement to stamp out what really was a non-existent threat to election security. But the fact is, the election was, and I think always have been, but let's say at least now, it was an honest and accurate and proper election. The Trump campaign succeeded in almost every demographic, and I want the listeners of this to understand what that means. Every demographic, whether it was Latin, whether it was black males, whether it was minorities, whether it was voters in California or Oregon or voters in Texas or Florida. In every demographic, the MAGA campaign led by former President Trump increased their numbers. They performed better numerically in most cases, even where the Harris campaign won the numbers in the electoral votes that were anticipated for the Harris campaign. Even those, the Trump and MAGA campaign exceeded their former numbers. They took votes away. Every vote, even where the Harris campaign did prevail, the measure of prevailing as compared to the Biden campaign in 2020 was less. So here's what I believe if you're a thinking person, if you're someone who cares about all these things, if you're someone who gives a lot of thought to the country we live in and where it's going, the first thing you need to do, and this is me, this is Don Windle on No Hate Radio with no other particular authority but me, saying to you that it is no good, no bueno, we used to say in Texas, it is no good to try and look on this election as an anomaly or as something out of the ordinary or something that's a fluke of some kind, because that clear, wide margin in the popular vote, it was a large margin for any type of race like that, and issues involving the Electoral College and predicted close votes and things that people were really thinking about going into the election. This is going to be very close and take a long time to count, and the Electoral College might make the difference and it might get thrown to the House of Representatives. Listeners, none of that materialized. None of that. So consider the scope of that kind of thing. What is clear, very clear, and I want to make this point, what is clear is that America has taken a hard turn to the right amidst an apparent dramatic increase in hyper-nationalism and isolationism that we have not seen in this country since the aftermath of World War I, a century ago, when the Congress wouldn't allow President Wilson to enter the League of Nations to prevent what became World War II. And take it from me, that isolationism during the administrations of Warren G. Harding, probably listed as among the worst presidents that ever served in the United States and the most corrupt, Calvin Coolidge, whose reputation is he didn't do anything, and Herbert Hoover, who is generally blamed for the Great Depression. So that what happened at that time, a century ago, resulting from hyper-nationalism and isolationism, was a decade or so of a real adjustment. And remember, there was no social media at that time. The economy at that time was not global. It was largely an American economy or a British economy or somebody else's economy. So it wasn't like it is now. So we have to understand, I believe, and I think it's very imperative that we understand, that when this country becomes hyper-nationalistic and goes into isolationism, it will have a dramatic global effect around the world. Now, recently announced cabinet nominations and statements made by the nominees by the incoming MAGA administration make it abundantly clear that the priority for the new administration will be in accordance with the campaign promises made. One of them was that the new president has promised that he will preside over the largest mass deportation in the history of the world. That's quantifies as somewhere between 11 and 13 million people. Now, frankly, the logistics of that are overwhelming in my mind. I can't figure out how that would be done, how they'd be located, and how it would happen, but it doesn't matter. The goal is there, and there's been a border czar appointed who plans to do it, whatever the cost is. So we know that the campaign promises, which are now characterized, by the way, as Plan 47. But if you align it with Project 2025, you'll find amazing similarities between Plan 47 and Project 2025. Consider me jaded, but I think it just may be a Project 2025 by another name, so that it won't have the little bit of unpopularity that Project 2025 generated. Now, what did they care about in this election? Did they care about abortion? No. Did they care the health care choices, right to choose? Did that drive anything? No. What about the January 6th armed insurrection that we all witnessed and that was an attack on democracy? Did they care about that? No. Did they care about any of the issues that the Harris campaign and the Democrats tried to raise as an issue of importance? Preservation of democracy. Did the voters vote because they were concerned about the preservation of democracy? I think not. I think the voters, and this is not just me, this is from research and other people who are very knowledgeable about the situation. The voters were concerned ultimately about two things. Whatever their perception was of the immigration issue in America. That's a very broad subject, the immigration issue in America. Are they talking about legal immigration or illegal immigration? Are they talking about a pathway to citizenship or are they not? Are they talking about the allegation that all the immigrants are a crime wave crossing the border? What part of immigration was it? I assume every voter had a concept of what they were thinking about when they were saying, immigration is my issue and therefore I'll vote for the MAGA program. And I don't know. You don't know what goes into the minds of all the people who did it, but clearly immigration and this broad single word, the economy, seemed to drive an unprecedented number of vote shifts, including in the so-called blue wall states, the strong labor union states, the states, did people vote to preserve their labor unions? Absolutely not. Project 2025 would end them. And we're talking about Michigan and Pennsylvania and Wisconsin and states like that. Did the blue wall states vote on the issues that the Democratic campaign thought would be important? My proposition to you on the air today is no. No. I think the voters voted on two issues. Whatever their individual perspective was on immigration and whatever problems it's perceived as causing America, and uncertainty about the economy. And they blamed the current Democratic administration for both of those perceived problems, and I think it translated into votes. But that's just a theory. I do know this. I do know, and I can say without fear of being controverted, the voters didn't care about the things the Democrats thought they would, like right to choose on health care and preservation of democracy and avoidance of fascism and other matters like avoiding armed insurrections and riots and things. It just didn't drive the vote. So let's start with this proposition. Currently, right now, today in America, American philosophy as defined by 80 plus million or however many voters supported the MAGA in candidates, whether it be the presidential level, the Senate, or other places. Those folks now represent what America stands for. And whether you would or would not like that to be the case, It is because America, its fundamental cornerstone, at least now, right now, is a democracy and the majority does rule, and this is a significant majority in a high turnout election. So what do we need to do? We need to acknowledge that. We need to say, okay. The okay is America is now a MAGA country led by former and incoming President Donald J. Trump and senators and representatives in the Senate and the House who are like-minded in that view in many cases. I'll quote particularly Ted Cruz of Texas and Rick Scott of Florida, but they're just two of them. There are many, many more. And they are like-minded with the MAGA philosophy. All right, so that's America. So the question becomes, you're an American, or I'm an American, what now? What do we do now? Reactions to the apparent major or at least newly revealed shift in Americans' attitudes and beliefs will, I believe, fall into four categories. One of the reasons that I said newly revealed, there is a school of thought, and I've given it a lot of credibility in my thinking, that this does not represent actually a shift in underlying philosophy or belief, but actually the first time that those who believe this MAGA philosophy have made no effort to cloak it or hide it in anything else. I'm just saying this is it. This is who we are, and this is what we want in this country. So understand that it's either it's a major shift, a sea change as it were, or it's simply the revelation of a belief system that has always existed. And one can support that notion with the idea that we have had slavery, we've had all kinds of violence. That's another rabbit trail. We won't go there today. But you could say that it simply reflects by revelation, by exposure, the attitudes that Americans have always had. In either case, it doesn't matter. It's the attitude now. So I think there's four things that are likely to happen. One, those who sought and achieved the victories resulting in the political trifecta of White House, Senate, and House of Representatives control, along with the ramifications for Supreme Court of the U.S. appointments and other federal judicial appointments far into the future, that group of people will celebrate, and they will say that they're vindicated and enabled. And so we have a whole group of our citizens that are going to say, yes, cheers, we've won. This is the America that we wanted. I think there are three other possible reactions to the election. Those who either supported the Harris campaign or at least were ideologically opposed to the MAGA movement will lament the substantial loss and feel confused and disenfranchised, which will result in one of three possible outcomes among those who were not supportive of the MAGA campaign. And I'm going to try to categorize them because, having given a lot of thought to it, there are about three ways. I think the former and incoming president would call us the losers, those who didn't win, those who were defeated in this election. Probably have three possible choices as Americans. One, if they are people who believe deeply that the election results and the projected wide-ranging changes in the economic and social fabric of America are so fundamental and irreversible as to be personally intolerable, if they are financially and personally capable, that group of people will either expatriate to other countries or at least relocate to a state where the ideas and plans and policies of Project 2025 and Plan 47 are not favored in the numbers in those states. Now, there's not a whole bunch of those, but I'll name some of them: Vermont, New Mexico, Colorado, California, maybe Oregon, Washington. But certainly in the South and the Southwest and Middle America and rural America, that's not going to be a place where this group of people can go. And in the first place, those who will actually expatriate or relocate are going to be a very small fraction for a lot of reasons. One, those have to be the people who are free to travel and go wherever they want to, and they're not tied to a job or family obligations, and they have the personal and financial capability to do that. So it's not going to be a big number, but I think there will be some who will do that. Second part of the group that were either opposed to MAGA or favorable to Harris are those who share the same ideas, but they do not possess the mobility or freedom for any number of reasons to physically relocate or expatriate, will make every effort to continue with life as normally as possible while harboring internal fear for the future. This will be the vast majority of persons falling outside the MAGA group, and it includes this, and this is the point I'm trying to make. It includes the groups of people who will be most adversely affected by the coming political climate. Who is that? We're going to talk about that in a minute. The third piece of the non-MAGA group, and the fourth, as I said, I think there were four possibilities. The last group are those who share opinions and belief with the above-mentioned people, that is, the ones who will expatriate and the ones who will try to go under the radar. But this is a different segment of the group. They are unwilling or unable to relocate like one of the other groups or expatriate, but they do have, this group that I'm referring to, some economic power or political capital. And what will they do? They will become allies. They will become allies for those who are the most adversely affected by the implementation of Project 2025, by that name, or if you want to call it Plan 47. Now, those who choose to go forward as allies will do so at varying levels of financial and other forms of risk to themselves. Well, I said earlier, I'm going to talk about who are those most adversely affected by the switch in this country to the MAGA philosophy. One, I submit, is women in general, but certainly women of childbearing age or who have daughters or who are somehow connected to the healthcare choices of women who now, in most states, will not have that choice. And I have heard friends of mine who are on the MAGA side of this column say, well, that they simply can relocate to another state if they feel the need to have an abortion and go to a state that's friendly to that. Well, who did that just cut out? Poor. People who don't have money, transportation, capability to be mobile. That's not an option for those people at all. I mean, you can say it's there, but it's illusory. It's not even real. So I would say that those people are adversely affected. They're very adversely affected. Who else might be adversely affected? Well, if you look at Project 2025 or its running buddy, Plan 47, what you'll find is that all efforts at diversity, equity, and inclusion will be literally erased. State-supported institutions, federal institutions, other people will be mandated to have no DEI programs anywhere. There will be no guardrail protections, none, if the project is completely carried out. Remember, I did say that, if the project is completely carried out, the LGBTQ plus population will be set back, maybe not clear to Stonewall, but pretty far. Pretty far. The public education system, public schools versus private schools that are privately funded and in some states will receive public funding to have a private school education because of efforts to not be in the public schools. Public education has already suffered a major blow in funding, and there are continuing efforts. I've just read of new bills submitted in anticipation of the 2025 legislature in both Florida and Texas that further will degrade public funding of public education. So what people are going to be affected mainly by that? Well, poor. Those who don't have money or ability to travel or mobility or really can't make functional choices, they're going to be adversely affected. What else? Who's a target? Transgender people are literally a target that was used in widespread political campaign ads on TV in 2024, which identified as a failing of the Harris campaign of Vice President Harris, as a failing or as some reason to vote against her, that she spoke favorably on behalf of transition care and health care for transgender people. That was considered a major flaw in her philosophy. Transgender persons certainly will be targeted and will be adversely affected in a major way by the full implementation of the MAGA plan. So what other people? I think the thread that runs through every group that's going to be adversely affected. And history repeats itself over and over and over again, and this has happened in history many times, but a dramatic change here in America now, almost every one of the groups that's going to be adversely affected, the majority of people falling within that demographic group are poor. So do we have a 1960s LBJ version of war on poverty, or do we have a war on the poor? I think that's worth considering and discussing when you think about, is it the right thing for America to do to adopt essentially Project 2025 under whatever name it goes. Now, when we go into these discussions and when we think about these things, you might say, well, there's also another group of people who just don't care, people who are just not participating in politics, probably didn't even vote. They go on about their lives. They do what they do. I didn't list that as a group. Had I listed it as a group, it would have been 5 choices, and one would be total apathy. People who simply have written off the political system as something that they don't want to participate in. But here's the problem with that, and it is a problem with that. The problem with that is you can't not participate in the political system. And it's a double negative, I know, but let me phrase that a little better. You will mandatorily participate in the political system because you're alive and because you live in a particular geographic location and because you use the currency of a particular country and you drive on the roads and you're a member of that society. So you will participate. Now, you may participate completely passively, but you will participate. Now, the thing that people are going to need to think about it. It's a mindset point, and I don't know how to properly articulate it, but in the past, there have been a number of people that identify as living on the margins. They're very poor, or they're have different gender identity than is, quote, standard, or they're drag queens, or they're transgender, or they're immigrant class people, immigrant category people, possibly those that are undocumented. There's always been this class, this group of people who have been forced to live on the margins. I suspect, and I'll at least lay this proposition out for those of you who want to think about it, that what's going to happen is those people who have not formerly lived on the margins and maybe even have jobs and some financial resources and so forth will be acquainted with living on the margins because of a lack of political power, influence, with being disenfranchised, having an electoral system that it is impossible to prevail in for a candidate. So living on the margins is going to start affecting more people, I think, than it did before, because the power structure built around Plan 47 or Project 2025 or just MAGA ideas, as touted by incoming President Trump, is based on some of the things that make it a little bit difficult, actually, for a mainstream middle-class American to understand how this election went this way. One of them is that that administration proposes further tax cuts for the very, very, very wealthy. You can't sustain further tax cuts for the very, very wealthy without doing one of two things: creating a national insolvency or putting more burden on the people who can least afford it. It's a difficult situation. It's a very difficult situation because usually associated with money is power and influence, normally. Not always, but usually. And that becomes the mantra, that becomes the test, I guess, as to who is going to be living on the margins and who isn't. So kind of the last point, overall point I would like to make on this particular podcast is, if you're a person in one of these groups and you're in that category of people who won't be relocating for whatever reason, but you do have some resources, some financial benefit, some political purpose, how do you become an ally this time? What do you do? What do you say? Where do you go? How do you do that? What is the definition of an ally of the powerless in a MAGA America? I suggest to you that one of the terms that I've heard used in the past, and it was used during the original Trump presidency, I hadn't heard it so much since then, but it was resist. Resist. Make the statement, call out a position that is in error and wrong by fundamental standards, by morality standards, by ethical standards, whatever you're trying to address. Call out that position, state it for what it is, identify that position and how it affects people, and try to exercise whatever influence you have as an ally to change or to lessen, at least, mitigate the oppression that's felt by those who are already in the margins and about to go deeper in the margins under this plan. So, in summary, what do? Okay, we know we're in MAGA America now. We accept that. It's true. It is the fact. And if we're going to remain American citizens under the what I call the charter, the agreement, the American contract, that means that we are the loyal members of America. That does not mean that you give blind loyalty to what you think is wrong in the processes of government. We are all authorized, we are all granted the power to redress our government for our grievances. You can protest. You can communicate to your elected officials. You can do those things. Now, you may say, well, what are you smoking? It won't do any good. These folks have all got their plan put together. And the fact is, if you do nothing, and I'm going to quote an English scholar from many years ago. It wasn't politically correct what he said because he said men, but he said, all that is required for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing. I'm going to change that. Good people to do nothing. Then if you do nothing, it's kind of like offering thoughts and prayers in the aftermath of a school gun shooting. Is that doing anything, or is it doing nothing? Ask yourself, what power or influence do I have, if any? What financial resources can I bring to bear? How can I be an ally for the people who are oppressed by whatever system goes into place? But more importantly, how can I speak truth to power? How can I do that? Is there a way? Everybody might have their own way. Everybody might understand a particular sequence of events. You might be able to affect something in one city council or one school board. You might be able to affect something in one county commission meeting. You might be able to affect something, let's say, homelessness, because now the U.S. Supreme Court has rendered a decision in the city of Grants Pass, Oregon, saying that it is a lawful enactment of police power in a state government or a city or local county government to make the act of sleeping outside be a chargeable criminal offense. Maybe you can work in your particular area to say that's just not right. Let's just don't do that. That's not correct. It's a status offense. It makes it unlawful to be something instead of doing something. Every time we get into that, we go the wrong way. I'm just using that as a minor example. America, we're going to trudge on here. We're going to trudge on in America. We just have to recognize now, I believe, and I stand on the proposition, that we have to recognize who we are as a country, and then we have to try to be an exception, to be the exception to the parts of who we are that are not good. Again, please write us, please call us, please talk to us, please let us know if there's something you want to talk about or you want to say. Tell us you'd like to appear. We definitely want that. Our website is nohateradio.com. Our phone number is 4424-NO-HATE. You can access us on any one of these platforms for podcasts. Maybe not any one, but most of them. And I'm interested, as the facilitator for No Hate Radio, I'm interested in how people who might be in any one of these categories of reactors to the election, what you think that means in terms of effect on your life as you go forward. Have a great day. This is No Hate Radio.